I was a scientist. I was on the edge, all the way down. Crab radio, KRAB, broadcasting at 800 micrograms, somewhere up in the redwoods, up on Venus, where we left no left turns unstoned. Left stones unturned. Oh, it was an introduction to the Rolling Stones. Scrambling everybody's brain. That was.
We have so much here I want to discuss with you, your parapsychology, your paraphysics. You went into, I guess, right after that. When did you go into DuPont and Boeing infrared countermeasures? And
when I came out of grad school. Yeah, when Boeing was the first job I got. That's what brought me back home from Delaware, where I was at Newark and the University of Delaware when I did courses at Princeton and MIT. I got to meet Charlie Muses, Dr. Charles Muses, Edward Everett Horton. I had Roger Penrose at Princeton. I had all these incredible Nobel Prize winners. They dialed them all out for me. That was old man DuPont. And then I wanted to come home, so Boeing brought me home, and I started with MASD. And when Boeing lost the B-1 contract, there were like 30,000 PhDs that hit the streets in one day. And they had a big poster, the last person out of town, please turn off the lights. And immediately, Jerry Pollack reached out, hired me on the spot, and started working in anesthesiology under Ray Fink, who was research on fourth floor for anesthesiology at the UW, working under John Vanica. And basically, I did all my paranormal studies in those laboratories. And when I was called out, it would either be China Lake, Stanford Research Institute. That's where I met Andrea Juharich. He became one of my model teachers. And I was, unfortunately, the one that caught Uri Geller cheating. And when I did, I took all of those studies and bending spoons and stopping watches, threw it out the door. Juharich is possibly one of the finest scientists in history that I've met. I was incredibly impressed with him. Of all the different ones, Dr. Stanley Krippner was my mentor. I had written a paper in 1970 demonstrating that Carolean photography was a secondary emission of electrons. And that got me invited to present a paper in New York City, where I got to meet Edgar Mitchell. And then I was at Mission Control in 1971, still working with anesthesiology at that time. Boeing, I think, lost the contract in 69, and I started working in 69 or 70, right then and there, in anesthesiology. And I worked all the way through until I left that university, probably in 81. 82, I moved to the country, where with consciousness, and frost line started at 3 feet, and we'd get 6 to 8 feet of snow every year, and you have to go out the second-story window to shovel the driveway, that kind of thing. That's a long time ago.
Well, do you feel like when you were with Dr. Stanley Krippner, did his work in parapsychology or have anything to do with your Navy intel and helping?
Yes,
because I want to get into this X-Files.
Yes, he's the one that introduced me to SEAL Corporation out of Amherst when I was in anesthesiology.
Oh, he did? I didn't know that.
Yes, ma'am.
Ooh.
Yeah, he was at that
time. Okay, so he is a big player. He is a big player. I didn't know for sure.
Way bigger than anybody had a clue. He was the bottom line, as a matter of fact. While he was doing Saybrook Institute, for example, and by the way, they just removed his behind and his offices and his desks this year. It's a travesty what they've done to that man. Travesty. Just like Jerry Pollack. Pollack, today, his laboratory last year, where he was doing all his water studies, the School of Medicine, not Department of Anesthesiology, which was, he was emeritus, but School of Medicine, broke his laboratory down into 3 offices for new anesthesiologists coming in. And Jerry lost all his toys. And that is the bottom line. for physicists. They're toys. That's how you can do something or not.
Well, Dr. Stanley Krippner, he's way up there in age. You wouldn't know how he's still alive, though, right? He still has a Facebook.
Yes, ma'am. He comes here every year to do the Shakespeare Festival, and he'll spend time with me reminiscing. I was down in Mexico in 2014 with him, the big consciousness conference, where I met Eben Alexander and some other people. He's still active. He's getting old now. And he is the nicest, most gentlest man I've ever had the honor and privilege to know. And he's probably responsible for who and what I became. And now I'm just getting old. He likes Shakespeare. By the way, I have a degree in English literature from Washington State University. As a third degree, I got my Bachelor of Science, not Bachelor of Arts in Science, in Physics, but I did an undergraduate thesis. I also got a degree in Mathematics and English Literature. I met Ruth Sloanham at Pullman, and she so inflamed me that in 1960, when the Seattle World Fair was there, I used to sneak out of high school and try to watch Laurence Olivier through Hamlet at the Seattle Center. It was incredible. There were as many ways to sneak into that. I had them all down, man. And I, as a high school kid, now all the teachers knew what I was doing, but I became inflamed with the Bard. And as a result, I have a degree in English literature, Romantic period. Yeah.
Well, this is really good for all of us. Thomas R. Becker is a mad painter. You know him from the other Revolution.radio. He's been a friend of yours for years.
Do.
Yeah, he's here. Mad, introduce yourself and talk for a minute, if you will. Got any questions for Dr. Ram, as you call him?
I already introduced myself.
How you doing? Nice.
Pretty good.
Oh, man, it's just like old times. Only
you mentioned
this is the new times.
you mentioned catching Uri Geller. Didn't he just do that in order to get a little trim from the women?
Yes. As a matter of fact, what happened was he was the real deal. He could do things. But the problem was he couldn't do it on demand. And so he started cheating.
Huh.
Yeah, that's the way I heard it. That he was actually
once I caught him
able
doing
to.
That, yeah, he faked it. Like Kalugina, some others. You say I was real good, and I'm looking for variables that most people couldn't have even. How do you isolate the variables when you're dealing with psi phenomena, or telekinesis, or a bending spoon stopping, which is these old ladies that were rich, huddled around him. He's real good looking. And bend my watch, break my watch, that kind of thing. And he started to cheat, and I caught it. And that took all of Teuhart's studies and threw them essentially out the window. And Teuhart is a brilliant, in my opinion, was he was one of my teachers. And I felt really bad when I had to discredit Geller. Geller, like all other psychics, at that time, I set up the Manager Foundation out of Topeka using new concepts of biofeedback. And I have that laboratory with me right now. It's autogen and German acupuncture. And the German acupuncture, I was using it for the wave-shaping capability so I could specifically talk to neurotransmitters. And there's a sci-fi friend of mine, Norman Spinrad, wrote a science fiction story around my work called Little Heroes, called The Wire, where you put this device on top of your head and dial in what sex you want to be for tonight, like a costume. That's the work I did in the video feedback that nobody's seen. Yes. I can do things. That is where the next evolution in man's consciousness will be the control of the release of these neurotransmitters for altered states of consciousness. And what I'm doing now is mapping out the areas where one begins and the other stops, where the laws of physics change with different states of consciousness. And over here, you can have the strength of 10 people, like being on methamphetamine. And over there, you can have ability in guessing, which is 99%. When Llewellyn, Carl Wojcicki, held the Gnosticon, and Duke University came in, foundation for the study of man, to do a test. They brought in Sybil Leek and Gene Dixon, others, famous psychics, James Hurtak, and I won it by 3 orders of magnitude, demonstrating the physics that I had developed for Navy SEALs on how to think with the gut. When you think with the gut, you do not make mistakes. You're working with purpose, and everything that happens, including getting shot, is supposed to happen. And that, when you go to the upper brain, it comes in with logic, and you start to have a second, third opinion of guess at what's the right thing to do. It is always the first thought that comes into your mind is always the most correct one, always. And that was what made.
How does that relate?
Super.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Finish that
No,
thought.
please, yeah.
I was wondering, you just mentioned the neuroscience, I guess one might say, but you mentioned new concepts, but neuroconcepts of the biosphere, with that, or the atmosphere, how does that combine? You were teaching all these Navy SEALs how to use their higher mind, I guess, but can you help us, because the biosphere with the land, sea, and atmosphere, and I'm sitting down here next to Hurricane Barry in the panhandle of Florida, and not knowing if it's going to hit New Orleans or we're on the nasty side or on the east side, but biosphere and the mind, I would love to maybe put you on the spot here,
There
Dr.
is a
Rick,
relationship. Yeah, there is a relationship to that in remote viewing, and the Soviets and the military, our military, do use that concept that came out of Prague and Czechoslovakia, has to do with cosmobiology. It is the next stage relating astrology to astronomy, and now the Prague Czechoslovakians, back in 1970, Ostrander and Schroeder had published a book called Psychic Discoveries Behind the Iron Curtain. And everybody got freaked. Back then, we knew about aliens, but we were more concerned with what Russia was doing. That's the fact. And so they used me in that regard. I did a tour at Broom Lake. I did a tour in Antarctica. I've been all over and seen krill at level 8. I've been there. But what was most important was Prague and what they were doing. Russia back then did not actually have technologies that they do today competitive to the United States. But Czechoslovakia was even beyond what we have today back then. And Dr. Milan Rezel was the one they had me debrief after I had done mission control. They gave me Dr. Milan Rezel, whom my ESP book that was published by Nick Begich, that was basically protocols on how to relate hypnosis, depths of hypnosis, to extrasensory perception. And back at the time I was doing that, both of those terms were considered pseudosciences. Today, both of them we call ESP instinct, and we call hypnosis, for controlling pain. And I'm telling you, I was always ahead of the curve. It isn't about me. I am a lead scout for humanity, but none of my thoughts, in my opinion, are original. I have built on other people like Roger Penrose. Penrose had written this paper, the textbook we did called The Geometric Universe. And I have just recently published the dodecahedral universe, building on his work. Now, is my work original? Well, yes, the diamond body and the work I did in video feedback. At that time, it was Stan Tenen and some others that were doing the Meru project. But my project was independent. It was Buckminster Fuller that hired me to understand and translate Bob Marshall. Marshall was a idiot savant. He nobody can understand him. He was a heroin user out of down there in Fort Bragg.